Imagine this. You're sitting alone in your dim apartment, heart racing like a drum in your chest, staring at a piece of paper that could change everything. 6 numbers match perfectly. $47 million. Yours. But instead of jumping for joy, a chilling fear grips you. What if your family finds out? The same family that has used you, ignored your pleas in the past, and treated your kindness like an endless bank account. Would they swarm you with fake love or tear you apart for every cent? My hands trembled, sweat beading on my forehead as the reality sank in. This wasn't just a win. It was a test of everything I believed about the people closest to me. One secret held the power to destroy or reveal the truth, and I was about to find out which. If you're watching this from wherever you are, get ready, because the suspense of what happened next will keep you on the edge of your seat. I am Cassandra Wilson, though most call me Cassie. At 34, my world was about to shatter in ways I never saw coming. But to truly feel the intensity of that moment, let's rewind to the life I led before those numbers sealed my fate. My existence was a relentless grind. Working as an accountant at a modest marketing company in Portland, I barely kept my head above water. The pay covered rent for my simple one-bedroom apartment on the city's fringe, a place that offered me a fragile sense of control amid chaos. Mornings started with coffee that tasted bitter with the dread of another day buried in spreadsheets and client demands. Tax season meant 60-hour weeks that left me drained, questioning if this was my forever. Family dynamics added layers of emotional weight that pressed down on me constantly. My parents split when I was 14, both remarrying fast. Dad Gregory, the physics teacher, found Stephanie, whose lifestyle ambitions far outstripped his income. Mom Diane married Warren, the wealthy but controlling businessman who guarded his money like a fortress. My sister Lisa, 30, embodied perfection. Ivy League educated, married to successful surgeon Paul. My brother Jason, 36, was the polar opposite, full of charm but lacking direction, treating family as his safety net. Among the relatives, Aunt Martha stood out as a beacon of genuine warmth, always showing up with kindness despite her tight budget. In stark contrast, Aunt Heather flaunted her wealth with condescending comments. Her son Ryan had a gambling habit the family ignored. These experiences taught me hard lessons about one-sided giving, making me wary. But my friend Charlotte, a dedicated nurse, was the one who listened without judgment. At work, frustration mounted as my boss claimed my ideas, and my coworker slacked off yet got praise. Still, I endured. My weekly lottery ticket was my quiet hope. Every Friday at Gus's, $10 for possibility. On my 34th birthday, after a tough week, I stopped at Gus's. "Happy birthday," he said. I bought extra, picked personal numbers. "Maybe luck today," he teased. That evening, Thai takeout, wine, scrolling envy. Draw at 8. Numbers matching one by one. Pulse racing, breath catching, hands shaking. Final match. Frozen in shock. "This can't be," I whispered. Rewound, checked site. Sole winner, $47 million. After taxes, approximately $28 million. Surreal. Sleep impossible. Researched winners, horror stories of ruined lives, families destroyed. By dawn, decision. Claim but tell no one. Secret to protect myself. Called in sick, met Philip Montgomery. Office felt alien. Showed ticket. Claim anonymously. He explained trusts, Taxes, team needed. Don't share too soon. Nodded, wanting to preserve life. Left with plan, feeling empowered yet alone. Weeks later, trust set, money secure. Routine same, old car, office. Secrecy weighed heavy. Thoughts of family. Would they see me or the money? In restless night, idea formed. Test loyalty with staged crisis. Fake job loss. Ask $5,000. Met Philip to confirm protections. Evening with Charlotte on balcony. Shared experiment idea. She worried, called it manipulative. But I was set, tired of giving without return. She helped rehearse. Story ready. Company shut down, no pay, need help. List of 10 relatives. Guilt versus resolve. With anxiety, prepared first call to mom. The call to my mother felt like stepping onto thin ice. I paced my small living room, phone pressed to my ear, forcing my voice to carry the exact tremor of someone truly desperate. Mom, it's Cassie. Something terrible happened. Diane answered with her usual distracted warmth. Sweetheart, you sound awful. What's going on? I launched into the rehearsed story. The company had collapsed overnight. CEO arrested for embezzlement. Doors locked. Final paycheck frozen. Rent due in days. Medical tests I'd paid for out of pocket had wiped out my emergency fund. I hated asking, but I needed $5,000 just to breathe. Silence stretched on the line. I could almost hear her mind calculating. Oh, honey, she finally said, voice softening into concern. That's devastating. Have you filed for unemployment yet? Yes, but it takes weeks, and the medical stuff, it was urgent. Another pause, then the shift. You know, Warren and I just put money down on the lake house. Cash is really tight right now. Maybe talk to your father? Or Lisa? Paul's doing so well. My stomach twisted. Not an outright no, but the redirection was crystal clear. Responsibility pushed away like a hot plate. I'd rather not bother Dad, I said quietly. And Lisa has the kids' tuition. Let me speak to Warren, she offered weakly. But no promises. You understand how careful he is. I knew exactly. Warren's money stopped at the front door of his own house. I thanked her, ended the call, and wrote in my journal, sympathy offered, help refused, blame redirected. Next came Dad. I suggested coffee at a crowded downtown cafe. Public space might keep his lecture shorter. He arrived looking polished, scanning me with that familiar critical gaze. You look exhausted, he noted flatly as we sat. I told the story again, word for word. He listened like a professor grading an essay, nodding occasionally, expression neutral. When I reached the ask, $5,000, he leaned back, arms crossed. Cassandra, he began in that measured tone I'd heard 1,000 times. I've always emphasized responsibility. 6 months savings, emergency fund. Where would that go? Life, Dad. Medical bills, car repairs, it adds up. He shook his head. And now you expect someone else to rescue you? Have you looked at your spending, subscriptions, location of that apartment? For 20 agonizing minutes, he dissected my supposed failures, budgeting, career choices, priorities. Never once did he offer help. I'd love to assist, he concluded, patting my hand like I was a child. But Stephanie and I are planning retirement. We can't touch those funds. This will build character. You'll thank me later. I blinked back real tears this time. Expecting disappointment didn't make it hurt less. Lisa was next. I drove to her flawless suburban home on Saturday. Paul was golfing. Perfect. She greeted me brightly, ushering me into her magazine-perfect kitchen. Cassie! Surprise visit! Love it! Kids are at swim. Sit, sit! I told her everything. Her hand flew to her mouth in dramatic sympathy. Oh my God, that's awful. Shut down just like that? Poor you. For a heartbeat, I hoped. Then I mentioned the $5,000. Her face changed, concern melting into unease. Oh, this isn't great timing, she said, glancing away. We just got the new Audi, tuition hit, remodeling the master bath. Paul's strict about finances. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent, I pressed softly. I know. Too bright. Let me talk to Paul. Maybe a smaller amount? Or you could stay here? Guest room's full of boxes, but we could clear space. I smiled politely. I need to stay in the city for interviews. She promised to call after speaking to Paul. Her eyes never met mine again. Jason's response was quicker and crueler. Text. That sucks, sis. Super tight right now. Talk later. No follow-up. Calls ignored. Voicemail. The brother who'd borrowed thousands from me over the years couldn't even pretend. Stephanie didn't bother with politeness. Cassandra, stressful, I'm sure, she said briskly. But we're not in a position to help. Maybe reevaluate your choices? Roommate? Cheaper area? I reminded her I'd helped with their cabin repairs last year. That was different. Family property. You benefited too. I'd been invited once for an afternoon. Warren was worse. When I called, he cut straight through. You're not my daughter. I support your mother. Your problems aren't mine. Choose a better career next time. Click. Ryan texted sympathy immediately. Absolutely, Cass. Lunch tomorrow. I'll bring a check. Hope flickered. Then an hour before, something came up. Reschedule soon. Never heard from him again. Aunt Heather delivered the expected sermon. Well, Cassandra, I always said that company was unstable. Told your father you should have taken the bank job, but no one listens. She lectured for 20 minutes about relatives who'd pulled themselves up without handouts. By evening, Lisa texted. Aunt Heather was already spreading word of my reckless begging. 1 week of rejections, excuses, silence, judgment. I felt hollowed out. The experiment had proven exactly what I feared. 7 people who'd taken from me wouldn't give when I needed it most. Then my phone rang. Aunt Martha. Cassie, honey, your mom mentioned the job loss. You okay? She hadn't even been contacted yet. Word had spread, and she reached out first. I'm hanging in there, I managed, voice cracking. Good. Lunch tomorrow. My treat. The next day we met at her favorite little diner. She looked the same, silver hair and a loose ponytail, cardigan with mismatched buttons, eyes full of kindness. She hugged me like I might break. We talked. She asked practical questions about job hunting, offered to connect me with retired friends. When plates were cleared, she slid an envelope across the table. $3,000, she said gently. I know it's not enough, but it'll help with rent. I stared, stunned. Martha, I can't. You need this. Nonsense. Family helps family. And if you need a place to stay, my sofa pulls out. Not fancy, but you're welcome as long as you need. Tears came, real, raw ones. She squeezed my hand. Don't worry about paying back fast. Just get steady again. Find work that values you. Life's too short otherwise. Driving home, I clutched that envelope like it was fragile glass. $3,000 from a woman who had almost nothing. The contrast burned. That night I dug deeper, found out it was nearly all her savings. Diabetes meds had spiked. She'd taken extra tutoring to cover costs. She'd given me almost everything she had. The next evening, I invited her over. When she arrived, I made tea, sat beside her on the worn couch. "Martha, I haven't been honest." She looked at me calmly, no alarm. "I didn't lose my job. The company's fine. I made up the story to see who would help if I really needed it." Silence. Then she nodded slowly. "I see. Are you angry?" My throat tightened. A small, sad smile. "Not angry. Sad. Sad you felt you had to test people to know where you stood." She sipped her tea, thoughtful. "But I understand. Our family hasn't always been kind to you." "You were the only one who offered," I whispered. She sighed. "People show who they are when giving costs them something. I learned that the hard way." She told me about her ex-husband, Robert, a small inheritance years ago. He forged her name, drained it for a failed business. The family story was they grew apart. The truth was betrayal. "Some see you as opportunity, not person," she said quietly. Painful lesson. Then I took the deepest breath. "Martha, there's more." 3 weeks ago, I won the lottery. $47 million. Her eyes widened, but she stayed steady. "I haven't told anyone. Not Mom, Dad, Lisa, Jason, not even Charlotte. You're first." "Oh, Cassie," she whispered. "That's incredible." We talked late. She asked careful questions. I explained the trust, the secrecy, the test. She listened without judgment. "What now?" she asked gently. "I'm still figuring it out, but I want to help you. Medical bills, better place, anything." She smiled softly. "Sweetheart, I don't need anything. My life is small, but it's mine. Books, plants, students, knowing you're safe, that's enough." Her selflessness cracked something open inside me. Here was the one person who gave freely, before she knew I had anything to give back. That conversation with Aunt Martha changed everything. Not because of the money, I already had more than I could ever spend, but because her reaction stripped away the last layer of doubt I carried. She didn't leap at the chance to claim a piece of it. She didn't ask how much or when or what she could have. She simply sat there, tea cooling in her hands, and looked at me with the same steady love she'd always shown. "Cassie," she said after a long silence, "this is huge. Life-altering huge. But you already know that. What matters is what you do with it." We stayed up until the streetlights outside flickered off one by one. I told her about Philip, the blind trust, the investments locked away for decades if needed. She listened, nodding occasionally, asking only the practical questions. Was I protected? Did I have good advisors? Was I planning for taxes and inflation? Never once did greed enter her voice. When I insisted again on helping her, covering her diabetes medications, upgrading her apartment, maybe even a small house, she waved it off gently. "I've lived simply for so long, it feels like luxury now," she said with a wry smile. "A quiet place, good books, my students, I'm content. But if it would ease your heart to know I'm taken care of, then yes, Let's do something modest, nothing flashy. I don't want to explain sudden wealth to the neighbors." That was Martha, always thinking of others, even when the gift was for her. The next morning I called Philip. His calm voice steadied me as I laid out the plan. "I want to set up a dedicated trust for my aunt. Monthly distributions to cover medical costs, living expenses, maybe a stipend so she never has to worry about bills again. Structured so it feels natural, almost like a pension from a long-lost relative or an educational endowment. She's proud. I don't want it to feel like charity." Philip didn't miss a beat. "We can frame it as a family support trust with restricted distributions, monthly payments directly to providers for meds, utilities, rent. Later, if you decide, we can purchase a property in a separate entity and transfer it gradually. Keeps everything clean and private." We spent the hour mapping it out. A cozy single-story home, accessible design for her health, near wherever I eventually settled. Nothing extravagant, just safe, warm, hers. I also told him my bigger vision. The money had given me freedom, but Martha's example had given me purpose. I wanted to start a nonprofit focused on elderly people living alone, people society overlooked, the way my family had overlooked her. Companionship programs, home repair assistance, emergency funds for prescriptions and groceries, small interventions that could mean the difference between isolation and dignity. Philip smiled across the desk. "That's meaningful, Cassandra, and smart. We'll set up the foundation as a 501c3. You can serve as executive director with a modest salary to keep appearances normal." By the time I left his office, the future felt less like a secret burden and more like a quiet calling. I still hadn't told Charlotte everything. The guilt of keeping her in the dark gnawed at me. She'd been the one constant, the one who never asked for anything. So that weekend I invited her over, not for wine on the balcony this time, but for a real conversation. She arrived carrying takeout Thai, our ritual. We sat at my tiny kitchen table, plates steaming, and I started from the beginning. The birthday ticket, the numbers matching, the terror, the lawyer, the test, Aunt Martha's envelope, the lottery reveal, everything. When I finished, Charlotte set her fork down slowly. Silence hung between us. Then she exhaled. "Cass, I can't even process this." "I know. I should have told you sooner." She shook her head. "No, I get why you didn't. After everything your family's put you through, I'd have done the same." A small laugh escaped her. "But damn, girl, 47 million? And you're still driving that coughing Corolla?" I laughed too, the tension breaking. "I like the Corolla. It keeps me humble." She reached across and squeezed my hand. "So what now? You going full secret millionaire? Clip coupons forever?" "No Bentleys," I promised. "But I am quitting the accounting job soon, starting the foundation, and making sure Martha's taken care of, quietly." Charlotte's eyes softened. "She deserves it, more than anyone." We talked late again. She asked if I'd ever tell the rest of the family. I shook my head. "Not yet. Maybe never. They don't need to know. What they need is to live with the choices they made when they thought I had nothing." She nodded. "Fair. But if you ever change your mind, I'll be right here, no matter what." Her loyalty, unasked for, unwavering, meant more than any dollar amount ever could. Word of my financial crisis had spread like wildfire through the family. Texts arrived daily now, not with concern, but with thinly veiled judgment. "Mom, Heard you asked Lisa, too. Should have told me you were going around begging everyone. Feels like you're trying to turn us against each other. Dad: Stephanie says you've been calling the whole family for handouts. This is the irresponsible behavior I warned you about. Lisa sent a passive-aggressive emoji reaction to one of my updates. Jason stayed silent. Classic. Aunt Heather was apparently telling anyone who'd listen that I'd finally hit rock bottom. The hypocrisy stung, but it also clarified. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about appearances, about what it said about them if their daughter/sister/niece was struggling. I scheduled the family meeting for Sunday afternoon. I told them only that I had an important announcement and needed everyone there. To my surprise, they all showed up. Mom and Warren first, her lips pursed, his watch gleaming. Dad and Stephanie next, him in professor mode, her scrolling her phone. Lisa and Paul arrived polished and perfect. Jason slouched in last, eyes red-rimmed. Aunt Heather swept through the door like she owned the place. Aunt Martha arrived quietly, catching my eye with a small, knowing smile as she took a seat on the couch. My tiny living room felt suffocating with all of them in it. I stood in the center, heart steady for the first time in weeks. "Thank you for coming," I began. "I know there's been a lot of talk about my finances lately. I wanted to clear things up." Mom shifted. Jason stared at his shoes. Lisa crossed her arms. "The truth is," I continued, "I'm doing fine. I've accepted a new position, better pay, better benefits. I start next month." Relief visibly washed over the room. Shoulders dropped. Smiles appeared. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said quickly. "We were so worried." Dad narrowed his eyes. "Then why all the calls? Why ask everyone for money if you had something lined up?" "Because at the time I thought I was in real trouble," I said evenly. "And I thought family helps family when things get hard." Heavy silence. Stephanie spoke first, defensive. "We all have obligations. It's not always possible to help even if we want to." "Of course," I replied calmly. "We each decide what and who matters most." I turned to Jason. "Speaking of priorities, you never answered when I asked for help. But last Christmas, you texted me at 2 a.m. for $3,000 rent. No hesitation." His face flushed. "I was dealing with stuff. Didn't have anything to give then." "You didn't even call back," I said softly. "That cost nothing." The room stayed quiet as I moved through the rest, reminding them gently of every time I'd said yes, every loan, every favor, every drained savings account, while they'd said no when I needed them. No one apologized. Instead came deflections, rationalizations, attempts to flip the guilt back onto me for making them uncomfortable. After an hour of strained excuses and forced civility, they left one by one. The door clicked shut behind the last of them. Martha stayed. She gathered coffee cups without a word, then turned to me. "You handled that with grace," she said quietly. "It was easier than I expected," I admitted. I wasn't afraid of disappointing them anymore, because I finally saw they never really saw me. She smiled, proud and warm. Powerful realization. I smiled back. "So, what comes next?" She tilted her head. "We start looking for houses, for both of us." And just like that, the future opened, quiet, intentional, real. A year slipped by in the quietest, most profound way possible. The life I'd known, the one defined by scraping by, counting every dollar, bracing for the next disappointment, felt like a distant memory, almost someone else's story. I resigned from the accounting firm with 2 weeks' notice. Arnold seemed genuinely surprised, even a little hurt, as though he hadn't realized how much of the department's success had rested on my shoulders. I didn't bother correcting him. I simply thanked him for the opportunity, shook his hand, and walked out into sunlight that felt brighter than it ever had. The foundation launched 6 months later. We called it Quiet Companions. Simple name, simple mission. To make sure no senior spent their later years invisible or struggling alone. We started small, volunteer visit programs in Portland, help with utility bills, minor home repairs, prescription assistance. Word spread slowly at first, then faster. Within the year, we'd touched over 200 lives. Charlotte left the hospital to join full-time as outreach coordinator. Her nursing background turned every home visit into something deeper than charity. It became real connection. Our weekly wine nights moved from my cramped balcony to the sun-drenched patio of my new home. Nothing ostentatious. A modest 2-story on a tree-lined street, wide windows, a small garden that bloomed reliably each spring. I still drove the Corolla for a while, long enough that people joked about my eccentric millionaire phase. Eventually, I upgraded to something reliable and unflashy. The check engine light no longer haunted my mornings. Martha's new place sat just 3 blocks away, a single-story craftsman bungalow with soft gray siding, wide doorways, 0-step entry, and a porch perfect for evening tea. We furnished it together, bookshelves floor to ceiling, plants on every windowsill, a cozy reading nook by the window. She retired from teaching, but kept volunteering at the local literacy center 3 days a week. Her diabetes stabilized with consistent care. The worry lines around her eyes softened. She looked younger somehow. Freer. We saw each other often, dinner twice a week, Sunday brunches, quiet evenings on her porch watching the sky shift from gold to violet. She never once treated the help as anything other than a gift she accepted gracefully. "You didn't have to," she'd say sometimes, squeezing my hand, "but I'm glad you did." The rest of the family remained at a polite distance. Holiday texts, birthday calls, the occasional awkward visit. No one asked probing questions about my new job. They accepted the vague explanation, nonprofit director, modest salary, steady progress, and seemed content. Jason still called occasionally with business ideas that never materialized. Lisa complained about renovation costs or private school fees. I listened, offered sympathy, never offered money. They didn't seem to notice the shift, or if they did, they didn't comment. There were moments when compassion overrode old resentment. When Dad had a mild heart attack and faced steep bills his insurance wouldn't cover, I paid the balance anonymously through the hospital's assistance program. When Ryan finally entered rehab for his gambling, a quiet donation appeared to cover the full cost of treatment. They never knew it was me. I preferred it that way. Help without strings, without expectation of gratitude or changed behavior. One evening, as Martha and I sat on her porch swing, the air thick with summer jasmine, she spoke softly. "You know what still amazes me?" I turned to her. "What?" "How different this all could have been if you told them about the lottery the day you won." I pictured it. The sudden flood of attention, the eager smiles, the family rallying around me for the first time, the suffocating closeness, the endless requests. "They would have been so attentive," I said with a small wry smile. "Maybe even loving." Martha nodded slowly. "And you'd never have known what was real." She was right. The experiment, harsh as it felt at the time, had burned away illusion. It showed me who stayed when I had nothing to offer. It taught me that real love doesn't demand repayment. It doesn't confuse dependence with devotion. It gives freely and respects boundaries. Martha reached over, her hand warm against mine. You did good, kiddo. Not just with the money, with what you learned. I smiled through the swell of emotion in my chest. I had the best teacher. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. I thought back to that Tuesday night, the trembling hands, the disbelief, the fear. The lottery hadn't bought happiness. It hadn't healed old wounds. What it gave me was clarity, freedom to choose, space to build something meaningful. Most of all, it gave me peace. The kind that settles in when you stop chasing validation from people who can't give it. The financial fear that once lived in my bones was gone. So was the ache to be seen by those who only valued what I could provide. I had purpose now, through quiet companions, through mornings in the garden, through evenings with Martha and Charlotte. I had boundaries that felt like safety, not punishment. I had a life guided by principle instead of insecurity. And in the quiet moments, I understood the deepest truth of all. The people who truly belong aren't the ones who appear when you have everything to give. They're the ones who remain when all you can offer is yourself. Have you ever tested someone's loyalty? What did it reveal? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story hit home, like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Your worth isn't measured by what you can give. It's measured by who you are. Thank you for listening. May you find the clarity to see the truth in your own relationships.